What up, World War 18? Back at it again. Welcome to the episode. Thanks for all of you guys watching for the first time. Hope you liked the video. Check out my other videos. Maybe you find something you like. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share. Thank you to those who've been with me since the beginning. Truly appreciate you guys for sticking around, watching my videos, liking all that good stuff. Continue to do so. Let's get into this video. It's going to be a good one. Hope you guys enjoy it. Sometimes when the credit rolls and the story is done, it should all stay done. But Hollywood doesn't always agree. Today we're diving into sequels that absolutely no one asked for and probably should never have been made. From iconic originals to baffling follow-ups, these are the movies that left fans scratching their heads and the critics sharpening their knives. Let's start with The Son of the Mask, a sequel to Jim Carrey's beloved 1994 hit. The Mask, only Jim Carrey isn't in it. Instead, we get Jamie Kennedy, a baby with CGI powers, and a plot that feels like it was written by a committee with a headache. The original was a cult classic full of zany charm and comic book flair, but Son of the Mask felt like it borrowed none of the original energy. It holds a dismal 6% on Rotten Tomato, and even Kennedy admitted it torpedoed his career. So I was a big fan of Jamie Kennedy. I think he's super funny. He's been in a lot of funny movies that I like, but I don't know why they would do Son of the Mask, a part two to a mask that people love, and then not even have Jim Carrey in it. Like, if he doesn't want to do it, then clearly part two wouldn't be good. And it wasn't. You get a fucking 6% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's one of the worst scores. Like, that's bottom feeder movie type shit. And that movie was actually in the movie theater. And Jamie Kennedy was right. I haven't seen him in a movie in years, and he was super funny. So that was a mistake on himself and his agent for even attempting to make a part two to a classic movie like The Mask. And I wasn't even a fan of The Mask, but I know part two sucked. Next up is Grease 2, the sequel to the musical that defined a generation. Going to John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John in their place, a very young Michelle Pfeiffer, and a storyline that felt like reheated leftovers. While the original had a catchy songs and electric chemistry, the sequel stumbled with forgettable tunes and wooden performances. It was more parody than tribute, and audiences weren't singing along this time. So the Grease is in my top 10 of all-time musicals. I love musicals. I'm a musical guy. There was no reason to make a Grease 2. The way they wrapped up Grease 1, I guess because it made money. And then a movie came out years later after Grease 1, which is crazy. I know Michelle Pfeiffer's in it, but she wasn't the Michelle Pfeiffer that we know and love today. The music was terrible. I don't even remember one song from the Grease 2. There was no reason to make this sequel at all. I guess it was a money grab, and it didn't grab any money. And I think I had that movie on DVD too, which is funny to me. Maybe because I wanted the collection. But Grease 2 should never have been made. Basic Instinct 2 tried to recapture the steamy suspense of the original, but instead served up a lukewarm thriller that felt more like a soap opera. Sharon Stone returned, but the magic didn't. Critics panned it, audience ignored it, and the film quietly disappeared. Sometimes lightning doesn't strike twice, especially when the sequel arrives 14 years later. That was the biggest mistake, waiting 14 years for part two. The second big mistake was the movie sucked. I'm a big Sharon Stone fan. Not a big Sharon Stone fan, but I think she's a good actor. And she was very pretty at the time. But when you wait 14 years to make a sequel to a movie that was a hit, that's always a failure. And I'm a fan of sequels, too. I love part twos to good movies. And this movie just didn't work. Zoolander was a quotable, absurd fashion world satire. But Zoolander 2, it felt like a forced reunion tour. The humor didn't land, the cameos felt desperate, and the plot was about as coherent as a runway interview with Derek himself. Even fans of the original couldn't pretend to enjoy this one. It bombed at the box office, and critics wondered why it even existed. So Zoolander 2 sucked. I wasn't a big fan of part one. Part one was funny, but it wasn't my cup of tea. But part two was so bad. Every movie, even bad movies, have its funny parts, so there were funny parts. They play it a lot on TNT nowadays, but overall, it's still a bad movie, and it should never have been made. This was definitely a money grab. They tried to make money off of because part one made so much money for such a low budget, and it just didn't work. Even though they brought back the whole cast, it was just not a good movie. So I'm a big fan of sequels. I love Terminator 2. I love Gremlins 2. There was a lot of movies that actually worked with a sequel, But these movies that I mentioned, oh, they were so bad. Like, how can you have a part two to a movie and not even include the original cast? Like, that's the first step to making a bad sequel is not having the original cast in your sequel or not having the main character in your sequel. That's like when they made Speed 2. Sandra Bullock came back, but how do you not have Keanu Reeves? Like, it makes no sense to make a sequel where the main character or the most contributing character is not in the movie. I can understand that Hollywood likes to make money, and it's always a cash grab, but you got to make the sequels work. Like I said, Terminator 2 was awesome, and it brought back Arnold Schwarzenegger in a different role as a good guy, and Sarah Connor was back, whatever the fuck her name was. That worked. A lot of sequels do work, but these sequels, they were just so bad. There was not one redeeming quality for any of these sequels. Grease 2 shouldn't have never been made. The original Grease was a classic musical, and Grease 2 was just a shit movie that shouldn't have been made with Michelle Pfeiffer before she was famous. It just made no sense to make a movie like that. So that's my take on that subject. We got a couple of honorable mentions for bad sequels that shouldn't have never been made. We got Independence 2 Resurgence with no Miss Will Smith. That movie came out like 20 years after the original. That was so dumb. They could have definitely made a sequel to that like a year after it came out or 2 years after it came out, but waiting 20 years, that was just a misstep. And then not have Will Smith in the movie, killing his character off permanently made no sense. Hangover 3, I don't even know why they made a Hangover 2. So they definitely shouldn't have made a Hangover 2 or 3. And Caddyshack 2, they turned a classic into a cartoon. The cast wasn't even the same, and people loved Caddyshack. I wasn't a fan of it, but people loved that movie, and that's a part 2 should never have been made. Sequels can be a beautiful thing when there's a real story to tell, but when they're just cash grabs or attempts to revive long, cold IPs, fans notice and they don't forget. So which sequel made you say, who asked for this? Drop in the comments below and hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the world of Hollywood. Until next time, I get y'all.